It's often said that business analysts spend up to 80% of their time not necessarily doing analysis on data, but rather gathering and cleaning up their data in order to then come to conclusions about it. And Excel can help make this process faster and simpler. Now, there's a lot of different neat tricks that Excel has to integrate with some software programs, but one of the good starting points is if you're using other systems, Excel can act as a connector between these because it's a very popular format to be able to export data in. Let me show you an example. Now, I've got some data here, and maybe I want to add to this data using other data sets. But the problem is that my data is in another program. In particular, let's pretend it's hypothetically in a program that's called Stata. Okay, so I've got a data set here that's in another software program called Stata. And the reason that we might use Stata for some of our data, like many database programs, is that it's really good at handling large amounts of data. So this particular data set isn't that big. It's only about 51,000 rows of data. But as we look at the number of variables, there's hundreds of them, right? It's a very, very large data set just in terms of the aggregate number of variables that we're looking at. Well, if we wanted to export this data into Excel to be able to integrate it, we can do that really easily. Stata offers a convenient export option. And if you notice, we can export not only to Excel files themselves, but also as a CSV file. And of course, you can open CSV files using Excel. So Excel's a great tool to kind of connect all of your different software programs that are out there. But even after you've pulled your data together, Excel can also help you when it comes to kind of presenting that data and integrating with other tools. Let me show you an example of that. Okay, so we're back in our data set now, and we've got data on different finance variables, right? So this is capital expenditures as an example, the total assets, and a variety of other kind of finance variables, and therefore different companies for different years over time. So we went through and simply used an average if function to go through and kind of summarize some of this data. But maybe we want to go through and present this data in a graphical form. Well, doing that, of course, we all know that we can insert a nice Excel chart kind of highlighting this data. The nice thing about Excel, though, is not only can we keep this chart in Excel, but we could also put this chart into another tool, like, say, PowerPoint, for instance. And because it's linked to Excel, when this data changes, if this data, for instance, instead of a 0.07, if we were to make this a point, let's make it pretty obvious so that it shows up, 0.5. Now, of course, the chart updates dynamically. Unsurprising. But what's interesting and useful is, and I'll change this to example. What's interesting and useful is we can take this chart right out of Excel. So I'm going to copy this. And then we can put it into PowerPoint. And as long as we paste it properly in PowerPoint, it'll auto-update with any changes in Excel. This is really useful because when we go to change our Excel data, it'll update on that PowerPoint spreadsheet, and we don't have to recreate that same PowerPoint deck every single time. Let me show you how this works. So we've copied the graph. Now we're going to go over to PowerPoint. Okay, now I'm here in a blank PowerPoint workbook. What I want to do, I'm just going to remove this text field. I could shrink it down, but I want to do a paste special, okay? In particular, I want to come through and paste by right-clicking and then select this paste option, keep source formatting and link data. When I do that, Excel and PowerPoint are now linked together, and so any of the data that I change in Excel, that change will flow right through to PowerPoint even after I save the file. I'll have to update my PowerPoint when I reopen it, but it's a great way to reduce the work involved with creating marketing presentations or pitch decks of any sort, really. Let's take a look and see how this updates when we change the data in Excel. So, we'll be right back here. We're going to go over to the Excel file again. All right, we're back here in Excel. Now I'm going to go ahead and change this back to like 0.07. And just for fun, so that we can illustrate this, I'll make this variable, let's say 0.1. So we see that the orange bar here on the far right in the graph shrinks down. Now let's go take a look at it in PowerPoint. Voila, right? Like magic. This makes it so much easier to create dynamic pitch decks so that if you have a presentation you're doing on a regular basis, say once a month for a marketing presentation or once a quarter for investors or something similar, this makes it really easy to go through, create those standard set of graphs that you're going to use each time, and you don't have to rebuild it every time you're going to do the presentation. Excel works great for pulling in data, works great for spitting out data. You can think of Excel as a link between all the other software tools in the toolbox. Now you should be ready to start putting this into practice for data in your own business.